Good evening to all the people looking in on the webcam. And today is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, the Annunciation. So the main song I'll be singing tonight is The Burning Word, which I put up on my Facebook page today, and I got a great response. But I noticed that the Mass, or the Psalm reading today was sing a new song to the Lord, for he has worked wonders. And it reminded me of a few years back, a friend of a friend. We were discussing music and songs, and this fellow was quite cantankerous, and he said, what's the point in writing all these new songs? He said, and there are enough songs in the world. There's millions of them. And he was looking at me when he was saying this. I had spent my life writing new songs. But I defended the position by saying, there's nothing like a real or a good, real, fresh song. It has an advantage on the old stuff, because no matter how good the old stuff is, it eventually grows moss around it. But before I sing my opener, I'd like to read you a little piece. The path into winter is soft, red, brown and gold, until we arrive in a grey land, bitter and cold. If it didn't hold at its icy core the greatest story ever told, our children and our old might not have had the courage to go on facing such a bleak and dark prospect each year. But through millennia, the tale told of the child in the trough, the manger, in a cave, has kept the Western world trudging cheerfully onwards towards spring, for more than gold, frankincense and myrrh, and daffodils on a hill. Something emblematic of another flower that blooms in summer draws us on for what its blossoms bring. Red as fire, the heart's desire to live, love, burn, and sing. And I'm rewriting a book of my lyrics. I've been doing it for the last year, bringing it up to date. And the final song of the whole, must be 60 years of writing songs. It ends with this one called Flame. And the flower alluded to in that little piece is prominent in it. If the soil below goes dry, it withers and droops and dies at the root, and its red petals drop like blood that won't stop from a wound. And then the flower, without any power, lies ruined. For the heart is the same, the stream in the vein gives it life. Cut off the flow, and it won't go, for blood is the source of all that force in the beat. Body and soul needed to roll for heat. Oh, and fire won't glow if wind doesn't blow on the hearth. The yellow blaze smolders and fades, and you're left to poke at the cinders and smoke that remain, but without air you would despair of the flame. Oh, when my first flame died and you became my love, a fresh breath of air made sparks appear, and my heart like coal lit up and my soul took fire, while out in your bed you grew blushing red, my flower. And that's a kind of an allegory, or there's a metaphor there, the rose being love, and love being the thing that we're all after in life. But another song which is appropriate for this time of the year, it's one called Advent 2013. I think I might have sang it the last time I was here. But it's an appropriate one for this time as well. You may remember that 2013 was the year of the big storms. And I used to go into the little chapel in the Claddagh, early mass there. And it was the time when a lot of people were beginning to have doubts and were beginning to drift away from the church too, because of people like Dawkins, who was putting out the notion that God is a delusion. Well, I've always been of the opinion that he was deluded, really, because for 2,000 years now, people have been following him and doing wonderful things. But this is a kind of a somber tone to it, because it was difficult for a lot of people. I know friends, family members even drifted away because maybe the excuse that there was so much corruption going on, cover-ups in the church, and undoubtedly it was beginning to fragment all over the place, especially in America, where I have a lot of friends in the business of poetry and stuff, writing. So this one kind of tried to capture what was the mood of the time. Plus the fact that winter is a very dark time anyway, that we have to get through to get to the Christmas. Through December, I made my way to the chapel in the bay, drawn like the Magi. I left my car, walked the dark shoreline without a star. The wind was against me, the ocean was wild, when I made the journey for the child. Black on black as ebony, the clouds, the rocks, the spread of the sea, and only shadows guiding me. The narrow path, the town up ahead, forest of lights, and the holy bread, and the deep hunger by which I'm led. All through the winter I kept on going, while the storms were blowing. Drawn like a moth to the candle flame that burned on the altar to the infant's name. The times were against me, where few now can conceive how anyone can still believe. Black on black as ebony, the clouds, the rocks, the spread of the sea, and only shadows guiding me. The narrow path, the town up ahead, forest of lights, and the holy bread, and the deep hunger by which I'm led. All through the season till Christmas Day, I struggled all the way, lured by an instinct and the fear I might fail. The little life in the stable tale. Now light pours upon me here in the spring, where under the sun I sing. And I love the twin meanings in the word stable, the stable tale. Of course, St. Francis was the one who was instrumental in making up the crib and all that many years after the event. But it emphasizes the poverty that Jesus' family, he came from a working class family, carpenter for a father, and he wasn't born into a royal setting or anything like that. Now, well, we'll kind of revert back a bit. I think there's a song on it's the final song on the first collection I brought out, called Just Another Tone. And while I was writing the songs for that song, or for that collection back in, it's a long, long time ago now. I was in my mid-20s at the time. And it was a bolt of inspiration that came out of the blue after struggling to write songs for about 10 years. Very hard to find your own voice, but essential. And it's a very realistic account of growing up in a town in Ireland back in the 60s, as I did. So there's quite a few dark songs on it, because I wanted to make it as realistic as I could. But I noticed while I was writing it, and that a number of the songs were pushing me to write them in a kind of a spiritual way. And there's at least 3 or 4 of them which are directly about services going on in chapels. One called Benediction, another called Mary, which I may do after this, we'll see. But this one is the final song on the album. It's called A Winter's Night. A winter's night ends just another tone, on the high note of a boy gripped in a breathtaking experience that threw light on everything for him. The light he is singing about isn't just the natural light illuminated by the angelic wing of moon he is observing in the night sky above his hometown, but is an inner light that informs him that the surrounding darkness and pain of the world, including the darkness and pain of some of the songs itself from Just Another Town, somehow dissolve in God's pure purpose. The experience related to in the lyrics was influenced by the New Testament story of the shepherd's visitation from the heavenly host at Advent, but it is also grounded in a real-life experience I had on a frosty evening when I was no more than 5 or 6 years of age. The memory is so old and so pure, I found I could only sing it from a third-person perspective. This is the intro to the song. I was standing in the cold street looking up over the rooftops and out into the universe, where 1,000,000 stars, billions, were glittering like hoarfrost on the tops of the cars along the road. And I remember feeling that the vast stretch of the Milky Way was just a ceiling to our town, and that all the houses along the street with their yellow windows and smoking chimney pots were rooms in the great house of the town, and that all the people in them were one close family. And I think that came from, my mother was a very spiritual lady, and but we'll sing the song. A Winter's Night. I'd like to dedicate it to Seamus too, who had a pacemaker put in there last week. I think he came down with a terrible pain or something. But this is his favorite song of mine. Winter was the season in a chilly street, when a young boy among children, unsteady on his feet, looked above the rooftops, where in the sky 1,000,000 stars like hoarfrost twinkled in his eye, and the moon like an angel spread its opal wing above those chosen children, and threw light on everything, threw light on everything. Warm was the feeling in the young boy's soul, while the other children shivered in the cold, till the young boy told them of the wondrous sight. Then all together they looked up into the night, where the moon like an angel spread its opal wing above those chosen children, and threw light on everything, threw light on everything. So like Now, I will do Mary, I think, as well. And I'll read you a little bit before it, because it's always good to get an insight into where these songs come from. Two minds doorway. I think I'll have to go back to the back. It's always good to have these. 23. Okay. Then you have to go back two more to benediction. I was playing handball with my friend Bobby O'Connor against Began's Gable End one evening when bells started ringing for benediction. My mother called me from our terraced house up the street and asked me to attend the service for a special intention. Being 70 ahead in the game, I did everything in my power to get out of the obligation, but my mother's appealing eyes got the better of me. After some huffing and puffing, I stuffed the ball in my pocket and went along to the chapel, dragging Bobby with me. The choir was in full flight when we arrived at St. Joseph's, singing a favourite hymn of mine, Hail Queen of Heaven, the Ocean Star, which I associated with my father, a sailor who was away at sea. As we took a pew near the back of the church, Bobby observed that we were the youngest people in the chapel. All around us, elderly men and women, bent over beads and missals, were mumbling prayers and coughing and sniffling. Soon after the priest started the exotic service, Bobby asked me in a whisper what this sunlight thing between the candles was for. And while I was explaining the function of the monstrance, an old man with a bulbous purple nose sitting in front of us turned and silenced me with a sibilant spray of sour spittle. Shh! Later in the service, while the priest was swinging the thurible in front of the altar, spreading incense in preparation for the adoration, Bobby nudged me again, asking me what was going on. But I ignored him this time and lowered my head for the raising of the encased host. As the sweet smell of incense reached our nostrils, the choir above our heads broke into a soaring hymn that I hadn't heard before. The melody was so pure and intense it sent shivers down my spine. I looked around the chapel and at all the bent, withered old people singing along with the cracked voices, and tears began welling up in my eyes. I can't recall the name of the hymn, but I tried to capture some of its essence in a few of the songs in Just Another Town, because it was the essential part of the town. We were surrounded by 5 churches, actually, a quincunx of churches. That's what they call it, quincunx. But so I can sing benediction or Mary, so I think I'll opt for Mary and hope that the words come into the head. I remember doing a show one night up in some arts festival, and there was a poet on before me, and she read her poems out of a book, all of her works out of a book. So she said, "How do you do it? Remember all these songs?" And I don't have that great a memory, but I remember saying to a friend of mine once that I must have about 60 or 70 songs of my own in my head. That's not that much really after a lifetime of writing songs. But somehow they remain, the good ones remain in the head. The bad ones fade away. You just give them enough time and you'll begin to see the cracks. A fellow from Derry told me once, he used to email me, he said this was his favourite love song, until his wife told him one day while she was listening with him, she said, "That's not a love song, it's about a statue." Oh Mary, it's true, I loved you, but it'd been so long I'd forgotten you. You dressed in blue and white too, and my memory picks daffodils for you. In a park in the city, I stole them for you. Now those flowers remind me of you. When I went to a park, when the spring was new, a bunch of those memories grew. That's true. So I picked a bunch and thought of you. Oh Mary, it's true, I left you for someone I thought more real than you. Yeah, Mary, I grew and I threw away all those memories of you. Till I went to a park when the spring was new. Then a bunch of those memories grew. In a park in the city, I stole them for you. Now those flowers remind me of you. That's true. So I picked a bunch and thought of you. Oh Mary, it's true, I loved you, but it's been so long I'd forgotten you. I believe Michelangelo was obsessed with Mary, really, and he got a lot of his inspiration from the fact that his mother died very young, and I think he put a lot of his mother into Mary statues that he made. He made about 4 of them, I think. My brother is a sculptor, and he shares Michelangelo's. he shares his Christian name, and he actually tried to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel on our ceiling in our tiny little bedroom in Limerick when we were growing up, I remember. God pointing the finger at Adam for the creation. And so I feel that I was almost destined to write another song about Mary, and it's not easy to do. But one time, out of the blue, this lady from the local hospital, the Galway, the university hospital in Galway, rang me up and said, would you come and sing at a mass that we're giving for the deceased members of the chapel? Margaret Dignan was her name. She was the head nurse, I think, and the chairperson of the committee for the deceased members. And she said she had heard an album of mine, Flame. I sang, the first song I sang there tonight. It's the title track of it. And she said, so she left it with me, and then I thought for a second. I said, okay, but I'll do it on my terms, on these terms, that I write the songs, because I wouldn't be great at singing other people's. She said, well, I really had my heart set on you maybe singing Ave Maria by Schubert. I said, you might have your heart set on it, Margaret, but that would never happen. I said, I love the song, but it's out of my league, really. It's in a different realm. And so she said, look, if you can come up with a good one for Our Lady, she said, well, we'll take a chance. And I said, I'll do it. So she said, there's one thing to remember, there'll be no payment for this, none. I said, that's all right. I said, hopefully I'll be paid in heaven. And Margaret left it with me. The minute I put down the phone, I began to quake, because I was wondering how in the name of God I was going to come up with what really amounted to 10 songs for this Mass that was about to take place in 4 or 5 weeks' time. Luckily, I got after about 3 days of mulling over it, I came up with just an opener, The Flame is Lit. Now the flame is lit, the table is set for supper. The guests are here gathered, we're together. The ruby wine's mature, the bread baked white and pure, we will savor. We have come to eat a spiritual meat with our neighbor. Our thoughts are on loved ones gone before us. A heavy price Christ's sacrifice restores us. In the sharing of this meal, through our shared ordeal, there is union. We have come to eat spiritual meat with our neighbor. Well, I had my opener, but and then I went on and I wrote, I think it was Psalm 62 I put to music. And I was chuffed to be sharing the credits with one of my favorite songwriters, King David, who wrote he didn't write all the Psalms, but he wrote many of them. And he also plucked on an instrument like this while he was doing it, because to write psalms or songs. And then I went on and I put one of my favorite Emily Dickinson poems to music. This World Is Not Conclusion. Beautiful poem. I think it's her best. And it fitted like a glove to one of the airs from my Just Another Tone album. And I was delighted with that too. And then I wrote 2 or 3 other ones. And then the big stumbling block came. How in the name of God was I going to come up with a Marian hymn in the form of Schubert's hymn? So I did a bit of research on Schubert's version, and I discovered a few things that I didn't know. One was that it was written by Walter Scott. The poem that the libretto the words were based on. And then they all got changed over the years. And another thing I didn't know is that the church authorities kicked up hell when it started becoming very popular, because it wasn't written as part of the church music, really. It was outside of it. And I could sympathize with that, because a song of mine, The Voyage, the same thing happened to that. When it became popular and was played at a lot of weddings and funerals, some priests objected to it because they felt it was outside of the canon of church music, which it was really. So the thing that fascinated me about Schubert, though, was that he died very young. And like me, some of his gigs weren't very well attended. He was playing a show in Vienna once, soon after writing the Ave Maria, which is probably the most famous of all hymns, secular hymns. But he was doing a show soon before he died, and it was a very small crowd showed up. And down the road there was a maestro playing, or some great violinist, I think. And it was a huge venue, and it was packed. So you should never get dispirited about, as long as you're happy doing, coming up with the goods. So anyway, after doing the little bit of research, I went back and decided to try it out, and I was at it for a day or two, getting nowhere. Saint Teresa of Avila is a favorite writer of mine. She's a great analyst of writing as well. She came out, she was constantly making the point that if the spirit isn't right, words clash. And I've noticed that all my life, because I've been writing songs, words, lyrics, and melodies for years, and since I was 15, 16, and now I'm an advanced age. So they were clashing goodo while I was trying to do this. And then one day I just decided to take a break. Our daughter called to the house with her newborn baby, and she was about to get christened. And I took one look in the little child's eyes, and they were sparkling, and I said, my God, I should write a little song for her christening, coming up. So when they left the house, a melody came to me out of the blue, and I sat down, tried to put some words together for the child, and the words clashed. I was at it for a day or two and just couldn't get it to work. I was about to abandon it when then the thought occurred to me that I could use that melody for the Marian song. Yeah, I have to get it in tune. An angel came to you out of the mystic blue while you were praying to God above, pure as a lily flower, closed in its petal tower. You opened to the power of love. Though pain would ensue from that flame that burned in you, still you embrace the burning word. The angel flew away after he had his say on that most sacred day for love. Though pain would ensue from that flame that burned in you, still you embrace the burning word. Gabriel came to you out of the mystic blue while you were praying to God above. Well, didn't that work well? And it came in a roundabout way, you see. The melody songs have to come from somewhere real, you see. They can't come from nowhere. You can't just invent them. Songwriters come to me sometime and they ask me, they sing me a few songs, and I say, did that really happen? They say, no, you kind of imagined it. I said, well, you've got to, don't be imagining, Dostoevsky said, don't be imagining things at all. Go for the real things that happened in your life. So the little twinkle in my granddaughter's eye became a song. One of the best songs I think I've ever written. In fact, there are 3 songs out of all my career that make up the final chapter of the work I'm working on at the moment. And it's called Flame. And it's all leading The book is called To the Light, and it's all leading to the flame. And that one comes into the final chapter, as well as the flame song, and as well as this one, which I'll finish up with now. It's called The Beacon. And again, I noticed when these songs came, not only did they come from real inspiration, but they stretched my musical ability too. I'd always considered myself a fairly mediocre musician. My thoughts were always on the lyrics more than the music. But I've always loved music, and I play it constantly. You know, even when I'm cooking dinner, I'm playing Bach or Beethoven or someone like that. I always listen to love melody. But this song came in the most unusual way ever. All of these songs came in very unusual ways. But I won't have time to tell the full story of it now. Suffice it to say, I had to keep a diary for a month. The melody came to me while my father was dying, which is unusual. You know, people say, were you sitting by your father's deathbed thinking of melodies? I wasn't, but it popped into my head while I was sitting with him. And then when he died, I tried to write a song about the struggles of his life, because he had a tough time, as most people do really in life. You know, it's, as he said to me once in his weakest moment, he's a very strong man. But I came into the sitting room one day unexpectedly and found him crying. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "If you only knew, son, what's ahead of you. Life is literally murder." And it can be, but it also can be the complete opposite. It can be, and he knew that too. It was just he was hitting rock bottom at this stage. But when I found my way, after a month of searching, I suddenly remembered an outing. This song is a bit like The Voyage, in that it's a family adventure. And we were out in a car drive out around Kylemore Abbey, and the kids spotted the white statue up in the hill behind the abbey and said, "Let's climb the hill," you know. So after a month of searching, this came to me, and it came to me in the most unusual way. I'll never forget it. It's the most unusual way. I had been searching for a month, and I'd found this book when I was in New York called Ascent of the Mountain, Flight of the Dove. And Flight of the Dove led to a song called Margaret, which is about flying, the experience of first love as a kind of flight of a dove. And that night when I wrote Margaret, I went to bed early, and I was reading The Imitation of Christ, which is a favorite book of mine. And I ended the chapter on the word frailty. Then I picked up my favorite book of poems just before I went to sleep, by George Herbert, The Temple. And I opened it up at random, and I came on a word called frailty. He spells it different, the Old English. And it's about, frailty is about the lures of the world, really, that grab everybody. There's no getting away from it. And I swear to God, when I woke up the next day, this song came to me. When we saw the white beacon near the top of the hill, the children stopped their fighting and went suddenly still. And before we brought the engine to a stop, they said, "Please, let's climb that mountain to the top. We parked the car by the old abbey, found a narrow path winding up the hillside. So we followed that. We met people coming down with smiling faces, whose bright eyes revealed they'd been in higher places. Then the children grew more daring and went climbing on ahead. Soon we couldn't see them, so we listened hard instead. And our wild angel started calling through the bracken, put our minds at rest so our pace didn't slacken. Over stumps, stones, mold and boulders, over rock ledges and shelves, we struggled on and upwards and rose above ourselves. And we weren't even wearing heavy boots. Through our souls we could feel real living roots. And we thought of the first pilgrims who forged that narrow track up that rugged hill face with the beacon on their backs. And as we strained over the last ridge to the summit, we wondered how they ever could have done it, till standing there before us, high above the rocky moss, we found a silent answer in the figure on the cross. And our breathless children looking on were saying, it's so clear up here, which sounded just like praying. On the recorded version, Martin O'Connor is accompanying me. It's been lovely singing for you all. Hopefully I'll go on tour next year when I finish this work. It's almost there.